Any questions? You can raise your hand or put them in the chat.
I just clicked record, Alina, so it'll go on to my Zoom account.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Haley.
No problem.
Yep, thank you for putting your names in the chat.
Did you want us all to put our names there regardless of if we're on the official?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Perfect.
So with that, I'll kick us off with our meeting welcome. So welcome back, everybody. It is a pleasure to have you all here. We are excited about this year. By the way, if there are other things and topics that you want to review, we're not meeting every month. We're doing almost every other month and as needed. But if there are other topics that you want to discuss, as we looked at a couple policy pieces that came up last year and had to move quicker, and there's always an excitement happening, definitely reach out. But we do want to make sure we're being transparent and being also proactive with our time. So for the meeting goals for today, approving of minutes, I thought we were not doing that. So no approval of minutes, updates in the path forward. So we'll talk about that, reviewing settlement requirements. And then we have Mr. Henson here to talk about the ombudsperson resolution and the bill update. And so we'll be hearing what's taking place. And we're glad he's here to join us. And then we'll open for public comment. So update on the path forward. Again, meetings are bi-monthly. As legislation arises, definitely reach out. We have AIR presenting at the full body meeting October 26th. And you'll recall AIR is the one that is doing the funding work. And so we're looking forward to hear what they have to say. And then we'll also be doing some follow-up as needed for that. But they were given the award from last year. So just a heads up on that one. Yep, independent funding analysis. Thank you. And then legislation passed for the state. So there's HB 430, which was passed, and that's to grow your own educators program, 6 through 8, HB 300, 6 through 8 mental health service units. So that's an extension of what took place earlier, the lower grades. What did not pass is the HB 252, 129, 389 you have right there, and then 293. Those are the ones that did not pass. Just things we've been watching. And definitely do follow up as needed. Moving on to my co-chair, Chuck.
All right, our settlement requirements. So these are the things that we're going to be looking for in the governor's recommended budget or legislation or et cetera. This year we're in fiscal year 2023 now. And so we're looking forward to what's in the governor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2024. The first thing is opportunity funding. I believe we're at 38 million now. I think it's a little more than the 35, if I remember correctly, but we're going to be looking for not less than 50 in the upcoming fiscal year here. The other thing to note is K-3 basic special education. Now that's in, where is it? It says proposed legislation via budget epilogue to change funding. What's happening there? I got my checkerboard squares in front of my words here. Okay. It is a thing now. We do have K-3 basic special education funding. And that's great. It is a multi-year phase in. So we got some units, the school districts and charter schools got some units last year for K-3 basic, or for this year for K-3 basic. And it's the mix, the ratio is changing each year. I don't have those memorized. If you want to see what they are, you can either look up the legislation or go to Christina School District's website, look at our budget. And we do have in the glossary at the end, we do have what the progression of units is going to be for that. So that one, it's I think we can call it done. We're just making sure that it continues to get funded and that it doesn't get undone. Next slide, please. early childhood, ECAP has been increased already, or it has been funded. What we're looking for 2024 is $12.2 million funding level. So that's an important thing. I know that program's being expanded. It's very important, and a lot of good things are either going on or we're trying to get them going on in the early childhood space. Teacher recruitment and retention, $4 million is in the fiscal year 2023 budget. So we're just looking for that to continue. Ombuds program, we're going to hear more about that tonight. So that's in place. The equity statement for capital projects, it's there. And the independent funding assessment is another thing that we are kind of watching. So if there's anything we got our eye on right now, it's that. The independent funding assessment, it was funded, it was awarded to a vendor, like you heard it already, AIR, and they are starting to, AIR is starting to reach out to schedule meetings. I don't know if Aaron, if you got anything yet, but I know that our district, Christina, has gotten invitations to some sessions where, you know, they're going to talk to me and the superintendent for an hour to just, I don't know, they're going to ask us questions about the funding system, what we think, probably what can be improved. So I think they're reaching out to every district and charter school for that. And then they're also putting together groups, I think of 6 to 8 people that are kind of expertise groups. So watch for that to come out. We did invite the Department of Education to come to this meeting to talk about the independent funding assessment progress and the plan for that. They said, sure, we'll talk to you, but we'd rather, we're going to, if it's okay, we'll go to the big group, the big Reading group. So that's where they're going to talk about the independent funding assessment so that the entire Reading Consortium, the big group can hear what's going on there. Supposed to be complete by January 2024. That should be in time to inform some budget things for 2025. I would expect, though, that anything that would change out of that, most of that you'd start seeing in 2026. Next.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
And yes, I was reached out to by AIR. And so just working on that. And Tika, I'm fine. Thank you for asking in the chat. That it went to everybody. The introducing Devin Henson. So Devin Henson is now in charge of the Ombuds program, has previously done advocacy work from what I've seen mostly in Newcastle County, but Devin is well known to many. And I, as an educator, worked with him before on some fun times. Before you do talk, Devin, just so you know who's in the room, just a quick round. You can see everyone's names in the chat, so I don't know if you need to go around and do a whole introduction, but you have representation from DSEA, from community advocacy, from Dell State University, from University of Delaware, and from Christina School District, ACLU, and did I miss any entity? Everyone's the name in the chat, so everyone's right there. But this is a very well-respected group. Just so you know, we have advocated for parts of the settlement, and so when the settlement was created, was passed or was made, we wanted to make sure that those pieces took place with fidelity. And so I know I've had some conversation with you, Devin, and love to hear about the program, and then would love to figure out just my guiding questions towards the end are how can we support you and what are pieces that you might need. We'd love to have you talk about what's taking place with the program so far. So Devin, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, first, thank you for having me. One of the main reasons why I did want to get out in front of everybody is because I have been an advocate in Delaware, pretty much statewide, but primarily Wilmington or Newcastle County, probably for about 23 years. And I thought it was important that because there was a lawsuit, there was a lot of people that worked collectively to make sure that there was an office of advocacy, or called the Ombuds Person program. I thought it was important that we be accountable. And that's one of the biggest things, that I want to be accountable and transparent. just sharing the things that we're doing because we want this to last in perpetuity, right? So it's not about any one person that's here. It's really about the program existing in the future so that we can advocate for kids. So presently we have 3 offices. We have an office in Newcastle County, which is in Newport, right across from the Parent Information Center. We have a physical office in Dover. We have 2 physical offices in Sussex County. One is in Georgetown and one is in Seaford. Presently, we have 1 staff member working in the Sussex office. We have 2 people, and our assistant ombudsperson is working in the Dover office. And we have 3 working in Newcastle County in this office. And then myself, I basically am stationed in Newcastle County. And then we have 1 bilingual person that works statewide. We've dealt with issues from expulsions, alternative placements. We've had a lot of bullying, special ed issues where children were denied FAPE, weren't getting services that they were due. And we've really made some pretty strong partnerships with like some of the more progressive or the more forward thinking, I like to call them districts, like Colonial School District. We've sat down with them and we're trying to come up with a strategy. How much time do I have, Aaron? Because I would like to.
The floor is yours. So we, I guess about 10 minutes, if you want, to just talk about what's been taking place, because we haven't heard from you.
Okay.
And then we'll do Q&A, really about how we can support you and advocate for the advocacy that you're doing.
Okay, so the 4 districts that we really have pretty strong relationships with is Colonial, Brandywine, Laurel, and Cesar Rodney. And I want to kind of qualify what I mean by strong relationships, because our job is, as the sign says, to resolve disputes or complaints concerning disparate discipline, inequitable access to school programs, or otherwise different or unfair treatment of students, right? So sometimes we are perceived when we come in to be contentious because, let's be honest, when we walk in, there's a dispute. The family's in a disagreement with the school system. So what we do is we have a process. As soon as a parent comes in, we sit down, we have an intake interview with them, get some information from them, and we send what we call a request for records to the school district. And from that, usually it triggers a set of responses from the school district. So the Colonial School District has sat down with us because they understand that in the last, I guess, about 3 or 4 weeks, we have been resolving issues with them, but it has been putting a lot of strain on their administrative body. So they want to have a way that we can talk to them prior to sending a request for records, and it just basically put a lot of strain on their administrative resources. So they want to be more proactive so that we can have a conversation and hopefully resolve issues for kids before we get to a place where it's an actual disagreement or complaint coming from the Ombuds program. Brandywine has acted similar to that since the beginning. So we'll usually get in touch with somebody from their special ed staff or somebody from their student services team and be able to have, a conversation before we go into the room and come up with what we would consider an amicable resolution to make sure the kids' rights aren't violated. Laurel School District and Cesar Rodney is pretty much the same way. So one of our focuses is that we do want to be collaborative because we understand, let's be honest, my reputation is that I'm contentious, right? So we want to make sure that people aren't under the impression that we're coming in to fight. We're really coming in to resolve issues, to make sure students are getting services, because we have some cases where students haven't been in school for 2 or 3 months and the school said don't come back. Or we got a case yesterday where there's a student that goes to Laurel, and evidently they kicked him out of Laurel, so he's trying to go to Milford. The coach called Milford, said he can't go to Milford. So now you got a kid that's sitting in purgatory, and we've had several students like that. So our job is to be able to go in, have a conversation with people without, hopefully, we don't want to have to file complaints. but we know that the student needs to be in school. So that's really what our emphasis is, that we want to make sure that we're working with people before we have to file complaints, because unfortunately, and Aaron, you know, sometimes, as a matter of fact, there was a situation with Aaron, and Aaron can tell you about it, where we were able to reach out to him and we resolved it. It was a simple misunderstanding. So
was a
that's where our
phone
focus is, our goal is, to try to make sure that we're not being contentious, but we are primarily focused on making sure that we are, you know, making sure we're protecting the rights of students. And again, it's a new program, so it's not, you know, everything's not perfect. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to everybody, try to make sure that we're getting feedback. Like if there's something that people don't like, tell us, because, you know, we're not perfect, we're fallible. Let us know what those things are, and the things that we can adjust, we will. Because again, we think this is about the larger community and not just about me or any other person that works here at the present moment.
And my situation was hilarious, but I do think, and in the end of it, the conversation we had, but I can speak to the being proactive, and it's saved a lot, because that's what we want to do. For Devin, love to hear. So the one of the goals that we had set forth with the Ombuds program was, one, to address the needs of children. So definitely having a space that can do that. The other piece is then looking at policy. So what policies need to be changed? Because there's already laws in place. And I know that in my conversations with Devin, with other groups, we're discussing the law, not discussing what needs to be there. So one would love to know, what do you need for the Ombuds program to be effective? So you've talked about the staff you have. So you have 2 in Sussex, 1 in Seaford, 3 in Newcastle County, 1 bilingual for the entire state. You have what? That's serving all the children, 120, 180,000 children across the state of Delaware.
Yes, sir.
Right. So
yes, sir.
What do you need to make the program effective? One, to be in schools and to advocate. The other piece is then what policy issues are you having, where we know, for example, we talked about mental health support. There was not funding for pieces. And I've had conversations where I've agreed with Devin before. Great, there's no money for it. So tell me what you want to do. That's led to some increases in special education funding collectively, not just conversations I've had with Devin, but that's where the support for increasing funding in certain areas has come from. So you can address those needs. So Devin, twofold, what do you need for your office to work? And 2, what policy do you think needs to be put in place?
Can I go, let me go to number 2 first. I think number 1, to make sure that it's codified, right? That it's in law, and that this organization exists. Because I think you'll be able to attract better candidates if there's, you know, if there's something that is more long-term. Right now, I mean, everybody understands that it's temporary, possibly. So that it's very difficult to recruit, you know, talent and people that really want to invest in this. So that would be one thing. The other thing, in terms of policy issues, I would say, specifically, like we were talking about the Attorney General's report, right? I think that adversely affects students, especially the students that were involved in a lawsuit. So I don't know if everybody knows, but in the state of Delaware, if a student is arrested for a crime off campus, the Attorney General sends a notification to the school district that the child's been arrested, and the school pretty much has the latitude to exclude that child based on those allegations. Now, it's a little more nuanced than exactly how it works, but the point is that the child doesn't have an opportunity to really have real procedural due process, right? They usually exclude the child before the child is adjudicated. The child could face double jeopardy, because if the child is adjudicated, if let's say the child is sent to an alternative school, then the child gets adjudicated and he gets off. There's no guarantee that the child will come back. Or what if he gets convicted? They could then extend his disciplinary consequence that they gave him before he even went to court. So there's just a lot of problems with that Attorney General's report. And I believe that it disproportionately affects poor and minority children, the same children that were involved in the lawsuit. Now, the DOE will make an argument that, well, we don't see that many. And you don't see that many because they don't necessarily have to report them. And most of the districts basically have a conversation with the school, with the family, and say, hey, look, you know, your child can't come back because he was arrested for this crime. We're going to send him over to Parkway, to Scope, or whatever alternative school they have. And then once they're adjudicated, they'll just bring the child back. So it's usually not reported to the DOE. So I don't think that the defense should be, well, we don't see that many, so it's really not an issue. So that's number one. The Attorney General's report, I think, is extremely problematic. And I know that it's something that I know Sherry Dorsey was working on that, but I think that's one policy that needs to be changed. I think alternative placements, I think they've codified regulations in Title 14 for alternative placements. So in essence, the only difference between an alternative placement and an expulsion is that it's not something that's reportable to the school board. See, in times past, when you had an expulsion, there was a whole process that you had to go through. It was for 180 days, and there were so many things that you had to do. Now they have what they call alternative placement meetings. And so instead of going to expulsion, they go to the alternative placement, and they don't have to report that to their school boards. So they can have a conversation with the family, send them to the alternative placement location, and that can be for an undetermined amount of time. So I think the alternative placement, I think that that's something that needs to be looked at. And that's it. I think I have, the bullying. I think that the bullying right now, because there's two ombudspersons, sometimes they mistake us for the bullying ombudsperson. But I don't know exactly. I think that the bullying ombudsperson that they currently have, that exists, I think what it's done is it has confused the school districts on what their responsibility is when it comes to bullying. So I think that some policy around bullying, what should happen once a parent reports it, who's responsible for making sure that the bullying report is accessible, because right now the law pretty much states that once a family fills out the bullying report form, there's a certain number of actions that are triggered on the part of the school district. The challenge is that it's silent as to who's supposed to produce this form. It used to be that the form was supposed to be online. I haven't seen it online this year. And so I'm saying I think that there needs to be some policy around bullying, who's responsible for what, and exactly what that looks like. In terms of what we need to be effective, that's a big question. Shannon, you might want to help me with that one.
Sure. Well, I think certainly more resources always helps. I think, you know, we were granted, the program was granted $1 million to begin. And I think Devin brought up a really good issue that we had with how the RFP was structured, giving the awarding organization only basically 18 months. And then that would have to be reviewed. So you're talking about trying to hire somebody, you can only guarantee a job for 18 months, right? So that makes recruitment difficult. When another RFP will be issued again, I believe it's May or June of next year, where PIC will have to reapply. Another organization can also apply. And if another organization gets it, well, then we're kind of, what happens with the staff? Can they transition over? Like, so we could really be in a serious limbo situation because it has to go back out for RFP again. What happens? So there's some uncertainty there that we can't really do anything about at this point. But I think that the codifying of this office, I think, is essential, again, to support Devin's point. And so we are still waiting to get a meeting with the DOE. They had some concerns. The drafter, we had a small drafting committee. Bill Doolittle was instrumental in that. So we had a small drafting committee. Tika was involved in that as well. And I know we had 2 meetings, I think, with the DOE to go over it. And that was like May or March. And we hadn't heard anything else, so we proceeded. Namdi sponsored the bill. He introduced it in almost the last 2 weeks of the session. DOE said they have some concerns that if he moved forward with the bill, they wouldn't be able to support it. But if he pulled it, they wanted to have some opportunity to kind of work with him or work with us, the framers of the bill, to work through whatever issues that they had, so that when he introduced it again in January, they will be able to support it. We're still waiting to get that meeting. I know there's a lot going on, especially at the start of the year. So, but we're trying to get that meeting so that we can have those discussions now, so that we can ideally sail through in January. We've got some pretty strong sponsors already ready to go as it is. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get it codified. But I think that's going to be really important. So we could definitely use this committee's support in helping to lobby to get it codified. As it was designed, the lawsuit required that this be an independent entity, not a state organization. And right now, DOE is pretty much in the driver's seat of this program, and that's not how the settlement is written. So this legislation helps to create that separation that was intended initially. So that's a thing that this group can help us do.
Love it. And Dr. Henry, I see your questions in the chat for Shannon and for Devin. If you can give us updates on that, especially any public sponsors of the bill as well. We'll be sharing our update at the next Writing Consortium meeting. And if there's anything we can share about that, would appreciate that.
Sure. And just to address Dr. Henry's question in the chat about were we planning to share those proactive practices to other districts? Absolutely. So if we would love to be able to, we're attempting now to do that kind of outreach to really go in to sit with district folks and school folks as well. So we're just trying to increase our visibility so they know that this is even here and what we do, right? But we certainly we're trying to really get out there and have those kinds of meetings with each department folks across the state. Dev?
And in fairness and full disclosure, I think everybody understands it. Like Shannon said, this is supposed to be an independent office. So sometimes it is what it is. So I think that the folks that understand that it's better for us to work together instead of going to litigation and being contentious, they're the ones, because we have a responsibility. Like we can't, because of the way that we do our work, like we request records, we read the records, so we understand exactly what the violations are, we understand what the dispute is. And in some cases, over the last 2 weeks, we have had tough conversations with parents where we've had to tell them, we don't necessarily see a violation. I understand that you're upset, but we've been able to have those hard conversations alongside the district. But there are cases where the school district is just it either deliberately or egregiously, or maybe it's in ignorance, they're violating the students' rights, and our obligation is to make sure that we're protecting their rights. And so the districts that are open to having those conversations and being transparent, and sometimes it's a lot of uncomfortable conversations. And today I just came back from the Christina School District, moved up into the Glasgow building. And so we were having a conversation, and it was about that. And it was a tough conversation with the deputy and with the special ed director. But I guess at the end of the day, I think everybody will come to the table the moment that this organization establishes the level of independence that it really needs to be effective. Because it can't be a quasi part of the system, or it's never going to be able to function the way that it was designed to function.
And in the chat, there's 2 questions. So Kristen had to follow about the ACLU connection and Shannon. So if you explain your role, and then Chuck had a question there too about skill set. So the first one, just to follow up, Shannon, your role, if you can share.
So I was actually in the middle of typing it now, but this is much faster. So I'm wearing dual hat. So it's why when I put in the chat, I'm still the policy person for the ACLU. I'm also helping to do community outreach and engagement for the ombudsperson office. So that's why the ACLU was represented the plaintiffs in the original lawsuit. So that's the ACLU piece. And I, of course, do policy with the ACLU, but I'm also doing outreach and engagement to help increase their visibility with the office, make those connections with communities who are actually serving families across the state. So that's where you get the connections.
Perfect. And Chuck's question.
I
Oh,
have
sorry.
another, based on the cases so
Yeah.
far, with skills, I would say, what skills and experience should those who are interested in ombuds work have? Well, we beggars, right? So we can't be choosy right now. But ideally, I think that it's somebody that should understand special education and related service. Somebody who's a critical thinker, right? Somebody that has that higher order thinking skills. Somebody that maybe is interested in Delaware Title 14. The biggest thing that we're looking for right now is people that really care about kids and have pretty much like an advocate spirit, and they have to have the ability to write and ability to communicate well. They don't necessarily, I don't believe that somebody would necessarily have to have a degree in order to do it, because it's not like a regulated industry. But it does take a lot of dedication and hard work, perseverance, the ability to read, write, and communicate well in all avenues, verbally, written, good listener. So that's what I would say the person actually needs.
Well, I was actually shocked by the comment you made earlier too. So those are the qualities you're looking for. At the same time, it's an 18-month contract almost. So I might not want to do that job with that skill set if I don't have a long-term role. I see the conflict,
Right.
there.
Correct.
And I
And
also,
that's why the biggest thing is, like, do they care about kids? And ask them, hey, if, in a couple of interviews I had, the main question was, if a parent calls you and said that their child was thrown out of school and they said that he can't come back, what would your response be? And I just see if they're focused on just believing that the system does the right thing all the time, or do they ask critical questions? Like, what did they get paperwork? Just see if thinking about procedural safeguards or procedural due process. Or are they looking at the investigation that was supposed to be done by the school system? So that's really, ask them if they know how to use Microsoft Word wasn't really a part of, what we were asking them at this point, because 18 months. People are like, this is going away in 18 months. You only have a degree. So realistically, it's just people that really had a care and concern and had a perspective to try to protect kids' rights. That's really all that we were looking for.
well, I have two questions. And for the policy work that NAMI was working on with Shannon, with Bill Doolittle, with others, and Tika, is the RFP process being addressed? One where it's, because you're right, 18 months is a little bit hard. It might be a 5-year window. So you can at the very least get some traction and then move forward. Is that being addressed? And two, back to the money issue, there's $1 million was awarded. Is that enough money to address the entire state? Is 1 million enough? And also, do you have full access to that? I'll let y'all deal with the budget, but is the money flow also being effective there?
All right,
I'm asking questions I probably shouldn't, but
let me go on the last one first. So I don't know. Okay. My role is really to hire the people and try to get what I need. If in terms of because I don't necessarily deal with the budget. I just come to work, train people, hire people, bring them on, what is here, so this office. And I will say that I think it's different. So if somebody else is in this office with me right now and we're both trying to have a conversation, you can't. So I would say that this office is way too small, and every other office we have, with the exception of Dover, is extremely small. I don't necessarily control how we get them, when we get them, and they were here. So I personally would say that you should have, here's the staffing. I would say that you have a director, right? You would have 3 advocates in Newcastle County. You'd have 2 advocates in Kent County, 2 advocates in Sussex County, and a bilingual in all 3 counties, right? You would have 3 offices. I would say the office should probably be in the city. And the reason why is because we can do everything online and remotely, but it's like, I don't think that people can understand the benefit of having that face-to-face interaction with a family when you can. It's a lot more fulfilling. They get the chance to bring their kids in here. We're having a conversation with them. We're building trust, understand. So there's just a lot more transfer that goes on when you're able to meet with somebody face to face. Now we can go out to them, but that introduces a whole nother set of struggles. So I would say that the office should be in the city of Wilmington, right? The other 2 offices should also be somewhere around an urban area and large enough to be able to bring people in, because in this office, I'll be honest, when you bring someone in, everybody is engaged in having a conversation with that individual. So, you know, that's just one of the things. So I would say that the offices should probably be bigger, because this should almost be like a hub for people to come to be able to get help. Like, I think that we should have the capabilities to do it electronically, and we do. But I think that you really can't replace the opportunity for people to come and interact face to face. And we learned that through COVID, right? So, so that's what I would say. I would say in each county, you should have at least a 1,500 square foot office, right? That's what I had when I had Education Voices. We had a 1,500 square foot office, 4 offices, individual, and a large conference room. And that gave you enough room to work with 3 or 4 people that actually worked in that facility, and a reception. So that's what I would say that we need for each county. So I don't know. I would estimate that would be somewhere around maybe $800,000-900,000 a year to be able to do that. And also pay for like your copier, because again, when we request records, they fax us back everything. And many times
They're faxing?
it's the first time that families have seen the records that we receive. So so leasing of a copy machine, all of the office supplies, that's the things of that nature. I think for under like 800,000, you could probably get.
So it's interesting
Say it again.
it's just interesting that you said 800,000 to 900,000 is $1 million has been allotted, and I'm curious what the gap might be with what the ombuds program is actually receiving and operating at. And I don't need you to tell me your actual budget. I'm not asking for that here. But there seems to be like there's a gap where if you can do all that for 900,000, you've been allotted $1 million, then something's not adding up.
Right. Well, I think too, and in the defense, so it's hard for any organization, right, to put the kind of infrastructure that would be necessary for this office, this new office, with only 18 months guaranteed funding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, PIC is utilizing their existing spaces by, kind of interweaving the Depop within it. But going forward, it is going to take more. It is going to take more than $900,000, in my opinion, based upon the work that we know that's going to be done. And this is just a ramp off, right? So we're just beginning as we build out this office, or we increase the kind of partnerships that we're hoping to see with districts and the like. We're going to need more advocates. This is just like the starting point, right? So this is the bare minimum staff that, as Devin outlined, we're talking about bare minimum staffing to get the program ramped up. So to answer your original question, Aaron, that you had about the budget and separation pieces, that's in the legislation. So that would actually solve both of those issues, right? The need for it to be separate and apart, and the increased funding that will get, and also it will give the office more opportunity to do this kind of policy work, right? There's no, as it was written, RP was written, there's no policy work. There's no one on staff to do like a policy kind of work, or we talk about looking at things from a systemic point of view, and those kind of, that's not even in its wheelhouse right now. It will, if we're given, if the legislation goes forward, and we're able to do more of that kind of proactive, systemic kind of work. But that's a whole policy on it right now. We're just trying to make sure we got advocates in place that can actually help to serve the needs of students as the cases are coming in.
And my question is back to the purposes around how to support the ombuds program. And I don't want to, I'm poking because I do think there's pieces in the policy work that can be done to increase, one, the amount of time, two, the amount of funding, and then also look at what the scope happens to be, so we can actually serve.
Right.
You serving 150,000 children with a few amount of people, somebody's gonna get lost. And I know some of the conversations before were about the ombuds program. I've seen Devin do, even with me, where a family might walk in and sometimes it's just contentious. And so an advocate, quote unquote, is I'm just here to argue. But no, like, let's try to figure out what the child actually needs, which is sometimes the parents got to do some stuff. Sometimes the school is wrong. And I've had enough interactions with Devin where he can just call me up. And that last incident, I got a call at 9 o'clock at night. And I was in my office with the person the next day at 7 o'clock in the morning. Here's what already happened. Like, I already know, but that was an easy one because I've had enough experience. And there are times we've had to go, like, we messed up. And here's how we move forward. So I think those relationships are important because a lot of the time is wasted in education when adults are just fighting without a focus on improving children.
And lawsuits, how much money are we spending on lawsuits that we're now actually taking away from the very system that we were trying to help, right? So we don't want to have to refer cases for lawsuits. That's not effective. That's not the best use of our resources.
Yeah, and in the end, the lawyers get all the money, and the kids
Exactly.
compensatory. Just so everyone knows, if a child normally wins, pick the price number, $50,000, $10,000. It's only a bucket they can use for certain expenses. So there's not a family that's buying a car. Typically, I'm talking about like in regular circumstances, not a severe situation where. So now you've taken money out, the lawyers got more money, and then you still have the same child in the same structure that's not effective.
And
That
what
might
makes,
be, go ahead.
makes that more egregious is that the compensatory fund is generally retained by the district that the family sued. And it is subject to their discretion, even though the settlement agreements read something different. I had cases, VOTEC, for example, they would just deny every claim, almost like Social Security, right? And then there's a clause inside of your settlement that it's a non-disclosure, so they can't go back and get an advocate to help get the resources. So McAndrews done got paid, right? And I like McAndrews. Now Stafford done got paid. The family's money sitting with the district, and the district saying you can't qualify. The only way the family can help get McAndrews to go help them get that money is to give them another retainer. So it's like a circular motion. It doesn't benefit anybody. It just costs everybody way more money. And then if that money's not used by the time the child turns 21 or graduates, whichever comes first, the money goes back in the general operating fund.
And in the end, the kids suffered, the family suffered, the school suffered.
And the lawyers got paid.
Lawyers got paid, and that's how the system works. I even have a kid right now that we've been saying, you have compensatory from a previous school. Here are ways to use it. And the family hasn't done anything. I'm like, there's no point in getting X amount of money and you're not using it. All that to say,
Chuck had a comment or a question, Aaron.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Yes. So you're talking about the legal fees and then some of the different cases you have, and then the 18 months. So I did take a look at the award letter that's out on mymarketplace.delaware.gov for the ombuds program. It is an initial 18-month contract with 3 optional 1-year extensions. So just to make sure that y'all, on that document, it says that the Department of Education and PIC have to, I think it's mutually agreed to extend at least 90 days before the end of each of the 3-year extensions. So that should maybe, if I were somebody who was interested in this kind of work, there's a difference to, if you tell me it's an 18-year grant or 18-month grant and we're already 12 months in, there's a difference between that and it's an 18-month award with 3 1-year extensions. So I think that there should be a lot of hope, especially if we can show performance to get those extensions. The only way they wouldn't give extensions is either if they were to deem that either if the funding went away or somehow they were to believe that this contract wasn't performing. And so I think the stuff that you're talking about, the avoidance of legal fees. I mean, if you have a way to, even if you can't nail down what it would have been, but if you can estimate like the average or find out like cases like this normally would have been 30,000 compensatory and 20,000 legal fees. And so we avoided an estimate of this cost by doing this mediation, or, definitely, I know you're keeping data because I know you guys are data folks, but if you have like this kind of case, we resolved this many of them, or we got this many cases, just to be able to show more than 90 days out, hey, this contract is performing. We're doing some great work here. We're producing. They also need to know, I mean, you had some ramp up time in that first 18 months. You weren't fully staffed from day one. So maybe if you, especially in the last 6 months before you go for your renewal, to show them like per month what you're doing, I think that would say a lot. And I know that, I mean, that's a pretty standard thing in state contracting to have those extensions like that. So, I hope that you're successful in that. But yeah, take a look at that contract 90 days out from June, April, May, June. So by the end of March, you guys should be talking about what the extension looks like, or if there's going to be any problem extending. So there's hope. When you said 18 months, I thought, oh man, yeah, who's going to want to do that?
Right.
But,
Well, that's a really good point, Chuck, and we'll definitely. I know we are collecting all kinds of data, but the idea of assessing what we say, what the cost savings, I think will be a powerful thing to be able to document. And quite frankly, I'm hoping that we can actually get it codified in this next session. And in it, I believe in the law, we're looking at 4 years, 4 or 5 years guaranteed. That's even better than having to go back every year to try to get an extension, right? So that's the ideal world. But we'll see. But that's a really good point. We thank you. That's good.
for sure. And what's normal? So when it comes time for renewal, if they do go out for bid, what's normal is what's typical is a 3-year with maybe 2 1-year extensions. So the 18-month was a little weird, but hopefully in subsequent renewals, and you always have to listen, if Parent Information Center is awarded, then hopefully it'll be at least a longer initial term.
Right.
So, all right.
And to go to that, Dr. Henry also put a comment in the chat if you want to speak to that. And then Haley also has a question.
I think you all covered it. My
Yeah.
question
And I will say that we're overwhelmed with the, in my opinion, with the low number of cases we have now. And just to be honest, because I don't think that people really know that we're, number one, that we're out here, right? So a lot of the people that are getting referred now are people that are from a network that's already familiar with us for one reason or another. So I think what was it, Shannon? Was it 70? Was it 66 plus 13, something like that?
What, cases or content? What was
the total number on
No,
that?
I'm asking you, what were you referring to? I'm sorry.
What was the total number of cases that we had?
Oh, I think we're like at 52 now, 40, 47, something like that.
So I don't think, because at Education Voices, we only did Newcastle County, and we were doing like 350 a year. So I know that there's more families out here that need us. We just can't get to them. Like we haven't had the opportunity to do the outreach like we need to. So there's a lot of places, a lot of things that we're lacking in, and that's why, like, I'm a big proponent of trying to be transparent. Like, if there's things that we're doing wrong or places that we need to be, or things that people feel like should be done differently or better, then I want that feedback, because I mean, the only way that this is going to work is if, you know, everybody agrees that this is something that we need. Like, we got to have buy-in from everybody. So I would say that we should really be dealing with more cases than we have right now. So we do have something to report, but I can't see how we wouldn't have at the end of that, by next June or whatever, we should have at least 500 or 600 cases that we have worked with, not including the number of inquiries, because this is statewide. I was only one county, you know, so there's definitely people out here. We just got to get out here and let them know that we're here to serve them. And to our defense, we just hired somebody in Sussex. I think she's been down there 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
So get up and get going. But and again, I appreciate that feedback that you gave too, Chuck. But any feedback, please let us know. I'll put my phone number in the chat too, and the office phone number.
Perfect. And as you're looking at that, I think the point Dr. Henry made is a great one about what is the money that's been saved for the state. So if we did 500 cases that were 50 hours each or 2 hours each, pick the time, what would this cost as a lawsuit? The value out there. And you also have Dell State University and University of Delaware on this Zoom, which are great places to talk data with as well. Haley's question, what was this?
Will the organization lead to, I think they'll have to, there's no guarantee in that, Haley. They'll have to submit an RFP like anybody else would. There's no like, I think, you know, benefit or I guess extra help or support we would get because, or I guess qualification or whatever we would get because they already have it. We kind of go back in the pot. So proving that PIC has, you know, used this money effectively or actually have already made a impact is going to be crucial.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Evan will pick up the phone anytime you call, by the way.
Yeah, I tried to.
I know you do.
And I'm serious about the feedback part. I put my phone number down there because if you have a criticism, anything, let me know. If you have a question, like I don't take it personal. I don't believe that I'm above, you know, reproach. So if you see something that you don't believe is going well, let me know. And you know, I'll make the adjustment if I can, or, you know, be able to explain exactly what transpired. But I don't want to have an organization where people are not getting services or something's not going the way that they'd like it to go. And nobody says anything until the time comes up for the grant to come in. Like, for example, our phone lines, like I have a problem with our phone lines. I can't necessarily adjust it, but I need to know if people are calling and they can't get through to the phone lines, because that's, you know, that's just something that I want to be able to give that feedback so we can make those corrections if necessary. So again, please don't hesitate. If there's something that you see that needs some tweaking or adjusting, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call me and tell me, so I can make that adjustment. Now, if you tell me and I don't make the adjustment the first or second time, you can stop calling, but at least give me a shot. You know what I'm saying?
Or be like me and keep calling.
And yes, there is a flyer. We'll make sure that it goes out to Haley or Kelly. You guys can disseminate it from there.
And just to go back, I know we're going to close the AG piece. I had a conversation previously with Devin about that, and the downside, the unintended consequence of the AG's report is anytime a kid gets in trouble, arrested, they can automatically be suspended, and there are places that are making really bad decisions with that information. On the flip side, we get the same data and it's been helpful for us. We don't add on consequences. What we do is, why is a child out? We know what's taking place. What are the supports are there? I've actually connected students with legal supports as well, because there are times where like you just got stuck. And there are times where a kid really messed up, and we're mindful of that. And so he and I had a conversation before, that isn't necessarily the norm. And so I understand the pressures against it, and also would love to advocate for how to use that information, because we got to see our kids be successful. With that, any other questions for Devin? And thank you for your time today, sir.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work.
Oh yeah, you too, sir. I did want to have, I know we're getting to closing statements. Chuck, did you want to share any updates about the Wilmington Learning Collaborative?
Sure, yeah, I had a couple questions, whether our Christina board passed it or not last night, or punted or whatever, but our board on Monday night, the Christina board voted unanimously to participate in the Wilmington Learning Collaborative. So right now, I think Christina is the Wilmington Learning Collaborative till we get some more partners on board. So yeah, thanks for asking about that. It's really exciting, and it was unanimous. So there's no back and forth or wishy-washy with our board on that.
All right. What else is there on the agenda?
Really quick, Aaron, do we know when, I thought that Brandywine and Red Clay also was going to be putting it up for a vote during their upcoming board meetings. Is that still the case?
Correct.
Tonight.
Okay.
Mhm.
And Brandywine, I can put it in the
It's the
chat.
19th.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And we'll look forward to seeing what takes place with that, especially as issues with the settlement. I do think we'll bleed into that, how opportunity funding is used, how some of the other pieces of the settlement have connected with this. And then I know the ombuds program will be definitely something to come up with. How do you then deal with issues that come up in that collaborative? So lots of upcoming information there. The next dates are on that was already shared. Was that shared?
I'm not sure we picked next dates yet.
December is the next time we're coming back together. We're going to send out some information with date options. Would love to see you all, especially look at the Wilmington Learning Collaborative. Upcoming legislation for January, by the way, will be big. January and June are when a lot of moving pieces will happen, and informing those decisions will come prior to that. So if we can get our heads around that, that'll be very helpful. And then always some time for some good trouble. I'm always here for that. Anything for public comment? All right. Go Birds. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thanks so much. Good night.
Right.